Right, so now that we have reviewed the design and we know which parts of our design, well, parts of our markup make up our overall page, we can go ahead and transfer these into individual include files. And we're also in this video looking at the directory structure while we do this as well. So don't worry too much if you're not sure about why we've created these folders. I'll try my best to explain as we go along. But really this way is perfect because it means you have a much better manageable solution to your site than just having, say, 20 files in one directory for each page, or for each include file or database connection or whatever you're doing. So essentially what we're doing is we're breaking up this design into fragments that we would include. Now this makes it easier two ways. For example, a database connection, we create this in a separate file. Because we include it in different scripts, we don't have to declare the same code or write the same code over and over and over again. And it's the same with this this template as well. We break it up into small parts so it's more manageable. We can also easily say, if the user's logged in, include this specific page, else include this other page. So it makes it easier in that sense as well. So as we looked at in the last part of the tutorial, we just have this template here. And we're going to be looking at the directory structure and breaking this up. So let's go ahead and actually start to create some of the folders. Now the root directory that I'm going to be working in is LR, as we named our database. So we are going to create all of our folders and files in here. Template we're going to remove eventually because we won't need this anymore, because we will have created the same thing but through includes. And obviously at the end of this tutorial we're going to have the same result as you see in the browser, but we're going to have it using includes, and then we can start coding and doing all the fun stuff. So with sites, this is entirely up to you how you lay it out, but I'm going to be using the way I usually choose the directory structure, and I have a core directory. Now the core directory inside contains functions and initialization file, database connections. We're not going to be looking at that just yet, but I'm going to create it there just so we know it's there. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to create a folder called CSS. Now you should have downloaded the CSS file for this already. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this across. I already have it in another folder. So we've got the CSS file, we've got the template. The template looks within the CSS directory for screen.css, which we now have. So that's all good. We also need to create a sort of a generic includes folder which will house things like our template, for example. The widgets will have its own directory as well. So we'll have a specific section where we can create widgets. So let's go ahead and create that widgets directory. Now we also need a folder for the overall design. And the overall design will be made up of a header and a footer, as we've already seen in the last part. And then within this general folder, we're going to have things like a side, the footer, the header, and the menu. So in here, let me just create an example. Create a new text document. Actually, that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and create here something. So within includes, we might have, for example, and I'm going to leave this as it is because we're going to be using it, header.php. And header.php doesn't mean the overall header, it means this here. So all of this will go into this include file and we'll replace this with include. So we've created an example of an include, but now we need to go ahead and start chopping this design up and actually getting it, into this include structure. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename template.php, and I'm going to rename this to index.php. Okay, so I've renamed the file. We now have an index file. Let's go over to our browser and change this here so we can preview it as we go along. Okay, so we've got our template. Now let's go ahead and just start cutting it up. So the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and create an include file called head, and that's obviously going to go in includes, and just we can plonk it in here somewhere. So I'm going to copy or cut all of this. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm going to save this inside of includes. So that's going to be head. Don't get head. Don't get head and header confused. Head's the sort of metadata title tag, any script includes, anything like that. So head.php is saved. I can go ahead and close this, and here in place of head, which is extremely important, you do this as you go along, is go ahead, break into PHP tags. I'll do it on 2 lines just to make it 3 lines just to make it easier for you to see. And we go ahead and we include, and then we specify the file to include. Now in this case we're working from the root directory downwards, or upwards, no, it'll be downwards. So we'll say includes and then head.php. So includes /head.php. So when I go ahead and refresh now, you see there's no difference. However, we've actually, we've actually changed the code. So with an includes, now let's go over to head and just change something. Let me just do this as website title with an exclamation mark. You'll now see that that's changed. So again, if I had 10 of these pages, all I'd need to do is come into here and make one change, and it would be reflected across the entire website. So that's useful. Same with header. Let's go ahead and cut that and create we don't need to create a new file because we did that a moment ago. So in header, let's go ahead and just paste that in there. We'll tidy this up a bit as well. Close that. We can close that. And we can go ahead and we can do exactly the same thing. Let me just put this all on one line. It just makes it a lot neater. Include. And the same directory, includes / and this time it's header.php. So we've got the header. We now need to do the aside. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, cut that. I'm going to include it before I save it, just so you know. Different ways of doing things. Includes / aside.php. Go ahead and create a new file, paste the aside data in there, indent that slightly, and go ahead and save this in includes. So this is a bit of a boring task, but we're cutting our site up and it's gradually getting smaller, and it means that then we can just copy something, paste it over to a new file, create an entire new page. We'll do the same with the footer. Let's go ahead and cut that out and include it. So it's includes / footer.php. Again, paste that in there, tidy it up, save that in includes as footer.php. Let's just see what we've got left. Now, interestingly, we've got the menu or the navigation. Now the navigation is now contained within our header.php file. So when I go ahead and open the header file, I want to save this in a separate file in itself. And you could do so with the logo if you wanted, but I'm not going to bother in this case. So I'm going to cut this out of here, create a new file, again just tidy that up, and save this. And I'm going to save this as menu.php or navigation, whatever makes sense to you. Close that off, and now what we need to do is include it. Now where do we include it, because this is already within the includes directory? Well, the answer is that we do it relative to the index.php file. So we don't need to go back a directory, we just we do it. See, in here we're in includes, here we're not, but we can just say includes / menu.php, and when we refresh, nothing's changed. That's good. That's good news. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close header. Now we need to work out where we're going to store the overall header and the overall footer. So we need to go and open up our directory. On includes, we have our overall folder. We're going to save 2 files in here. One's the header, one's the footer. The header is going to consist of all this. The footer is going to consist of all of this, and we'll just be left with the page contents. And that's perfect, because then we can just knock out the page contents and we'll have a header and footer that match every single page. So let's go ahead and just copy all of this and cut that out, create a new page in here, save that in includes overall as header.php. You could call it something like overall header if it makes more sense to you and you're not going to get confused. I can imagine that you would do. But I've saved that now, so I can go ahead and include it up here. So include includes / overall / header.php. I think that's initially why I did it, because it makes sense to say overall header with the directory there. So I'll do the same with the footer, same process, cut that, create a new file, save this, and go in includes overall and save this as footer.php. Go ahead and close that, and again we can just copy and paste this to be quick because it's more or less the same directory, just the footer file is changed. Let's go ahead and indent this, and there we go. So this is now our page. We've reduced all of that markup to 4 lines of code. This is your content in here, this is your header, this is your footer. So let's go ahead and refresh. Nothing's changed, it's exactly the same. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new file, and this is going to be, for example, our register page. So let's go ahead and create a new file. I'm just going to save this as register.php, and I'm going to copy that, paste that, and I'll change this to register, and I'll change this to registration page. So now I have 2 files that are almost identical except for the content in the middle, and when I go ahead and say register.php, we have exactly the same template with just different contents. So if you've been bored to death while you've been watching this, now you'll reap the reward of breaking this up into multiple parts, and it's a lot easier to include now. So obviously it's not entirely necessary to break it up as much as I've done into individual fragments like the menu and the widget, or the widgets are quite important. But essentially now we've broken this up. Now there's one last thing to do, and that is with regards to the widgets. At the moment we have got nothing inside of our widgets folder, and that's because what we're going to be doing is in the sidebar we're going to be creating some conditional statements. One of them is, if the user's logged in, show this particular widget that allows the user to log in, so it will be a login form. The else on that if statement will be include the page that greets the user and gives them some additional options like to change their password and whatever. So we've got these in aside, this widget here. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of cut this out, create a new file again, and copy this into widgets, and I'm going to call this one, let's just say we'll call this login.php. Okay, so we've now got a widget that allows us to log in, so I'll just say login form here. Okay, so inside of aside.php now I'm going to go ahead and include this login form. Now we obviously don't want this to be shown all the time because our users will be logged in at one point. So this here is just for purposes of breaking the template up, but we're going to have some, I'll just give you a quick demonstration. We're going to have some code in here like this a bit later. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be saying if logged in, and in here we'll include sort of like logged in.php. Well, we'll do includes widgets logged in.php. So that will show hello Alex or hello Billy or whoever's logged in. Otherwise, we will be including the one we're just about to include, which is login, and that will be the prompt to log in. So, don't worry too much about that now, but that's essentially what we're going to be doing. So for now, we'll just go ahead and we'll include includes widgets login.php. And when I refresh, there we go, we've got login and login form. So that's going to be our login form eventually. And like I said, we're going to have a conditional statement around that. So we've broken up our design successfully. We've looked somewhat at well, mostly at the directory structure, and we haven't looked at the core because that's more of the back end. We've been focusing on this design and breaking this up so far. But essentially that's it. We've got our 2 pages here. You've seen how easy it is to duplicate pages, and we can actually start to work on what we all want to start working on, which is the login and register process.